Only a few months ago, I heard words from my doctor that left me frozen. Your liver is full of fat. I never imagined that I, someone who always considered myself relatively healthy, would end up with a problem like this. The news took me completely by surprise. For weeks I wondered, how had I gotten to this point? I started to remember certain symptoms I had been ignoring for months, even years. Each day I felt more tired, as if I were dragging my body. After every meal, the heaviness in my stomach was unbearable. My abdomen was always bloated, as if I had a ball under my clothes, and no matter how much I tried to eat less or eat healthier, nothing seemed to improve. At night I slept badly. I woke up sweating, with a feeling of discomfort I couldn't explain. And to top it off, my blood tests started showing altered liver enzymes, something that, until then, I didn't really understand. At first I felt afraid, because when you hear the words fatty liver, things like cirrhosis, liver disease, or even something worse come to mind. Then came the frustration, because no one really teaches you what to do or how to reverse it. But after weeks of research, listening to experts, and trying different changes, I discovered something that would mark a before and after in my health. A small habit, something I started doing only once a day, but that completely transformed my energy, my digestion, and most importantly, my blood work. Today I want to tell you exactly what I did, what mistake I made for years, what small gesture made the difference, and how you too can start healing your liver naturally and simply. But before I tell you what saved me, I'd love to know how many years old you are, and from which country or city you're watching me. Leave it in the comments, because I like getting to know the people who are part of this health community. Now then, let's begin. Part 1. What fatty liver is and why it happens. Truth 1. Now that I've told you how it all began for me, I want us to understand together exactly what fatty liver is and why so many people, especially those over 60 years old, are suffering from it without knowing. First, what is fatty liver? Its medical name is hepatic steatosis. It sounds complicated, but the explanation is quite simple. It means that fat has started to accumulate inside your liver. The liver, as you surely already know, is one of the most important organs in the body. It's the main one in charge of clearing toxins, processing food, producing the bile that helps digest fats, and also regulating many vital functions like metabolism and energy storage. But when it starts to fill with fat, all of that is affected. It's like having a water filter that, with years and use, begins to clog, to get saturated, and filters worse and worse. There are two main types of fatty liver. First is alcoholic fatty liver. This happens when alcohol has been consumed in excess for years. Alcohol directly damages liver cells and encourages fat accumulation. But there's another type that is even more common, and that's non-alcoholic fatty liver. This type can happen to people who don't drink, or who only drink once in a while. And here comes the surprise. This is the one I had, and the one millions of people over 60 years old have, without knowing it. Why does it happen? The reasons are several, and often combine. First, diet. Today, most of us consume processed foods rich in sugars, refined flours, and bad fats. Things like white bread, cookies, deli meats, soft drinks, or fast food. All of that causes the body to accumulate more fat than it can process, and part of that fat ends up in the liver. Second, lack of exercise. With the passing of the years, many people become more sedentary. We walk less, we move little, and that makes the metabolism slow down, making it easier to accumulate internal fat. Third, age. After 60 years old, the body changes. Metabolism slows. The liver's ability to regenerate decreases. And in addition, many people start taking medications chronically. Fourth, medications. Some drugs taken to control blood pressure, cholesterol, or diabetes can also overload the liver and encourage it to fill with fat over time. Now, how does having fatty liver really affect you? At first, you might not notice anything. That's why it's so dangerous. But over time, symptoms start to appear such as constant fatigue. You wake up tired, and you end the day even worse. Heavy digestion. You feel like food gets stuck in your stomach. Bloated abdomen. That annoying feeling of being swollen all the time. Discomfort on the right side of the abdomen, just under the ribs. High cholesterol and out-of-control triglycerides, even if you eat healthy. And in some cases, changes in blood tests, like increased liver enzymes. The most worrying thing is that, if not treated in time, fatty liver can progress to more serious problems, like chronic inflammation, fibrosis, or even cirrhosis. That's why, when my doctor told me my liver was full of fat, I couldn't ignore it. I had to do something, and I had to do it right away. The silent signs. I ignored for years, truth too. Now that you know what fatty liver really is, I want to tell you something that was very hard for me to accept. The signs that my liver was in trouble had been appearing for years, and I simply ignored them. It all started very subtly. First came the constant tiredness, but it wasn't the typical tiredness after a day of work or walking a lot. It was a deep exhaustion, as if every morning upon waking, I already felt the weight of the day on me. I remember that before I could do my tasks with energy, go out for a walk, do the shopping, even help around the house without problems. But little by little, I started to notice that any activity, no matter how small, left me without strength. Sometimes I went up a couple of stairs, and I was short of breath, or I simply preferred to stay seated, because getting up made me feel a laziness I didn't understand. Then came the digestion problems. After every meal, I felt terrible heaviness in my stomach. It was as if the food just stayed there, undigested. That uncomfortable feeling of having a full abdomen, even when I had eaten little. And no matter how much I tried to eat lighter, I kept feeling the same. Then something started that at first I didn't give importance to, but over time it really worried me. Abdominal bloating. My belly seemed to grow day after day, and it wasn't just fat. It was a strange inflammation, as if I were always about to burst. My clothes were tight, and at night, I had a hard time finding a comfortable position to sleep. But the worst came when I went for routine blood tests. As every year, my doctor asked me for a general checkup, and that's when the first alterations in my transaminases appeared. For those who don't know, transaminases are enzymes that indicate how your liver is functioning, and when they're elevated, it's a clear sign that something is not right. I remember that appointment perfectly. The doctor looked at me seriously and said, "Your ALT and AST levels are above normal. This indicates that your liver is inflamed. You probably have fatty liver." I was in shock. I asked, "But how? I don't drink. How can I have that?" And his answer was direct. "You don't need to drink alcohol to have this problem. Non-alcoholic fatty liver is increasingly common, especially after 60 years old, and many people like you have it without knowing." He explained that nowadays, because of poor diet, sedentary lifestyle, stress, and certain medications, thousands of older people are developing fatty liver, and that most only find out when it's already too late. That's when fear really set in, because I understood that it wasn't just a matter of feeling a bit tired or having poor digestion. It was my health, my life, that was at stake. From that day on, I knew I had to do something. But the good news is that I was still on time. What you shouldn't do, common mistakes. After that doctor's visit, the first thing I did was panic, and like many, I fell into several mistakes that I want to share with you today. Because if you're going through the same thing, I want you to avoid them. The first mistake, and one of the most serious, was continuing to eat ultra-processed foods. I thought, well, if I stop eating sugar and eat less, I'm already doing something good, right? But the reality is that, without realizing it, I kept consuming products full of ingredients my liver couldn't handle. Sugar-free cookies, light cereals, low-fat deli meats, ready-to-heat microwave meals, all of that, even if the label looked healthy, was still full of chemicals, refined vegetable oils, preservatives and colorings, and all those compounds go straight to overloading the liver. The second mistake was not taking the alcohol issue seriously. I wasn't someone who drank much, just a small glass of wine once in a while, or a beer on the weekends. But what I didn't know is that after 60 years old, even small amounts of alcohol can do a lot of harm to a liver that's already inflamed. I remember my doctor was very clear. If you want your liver to recover, you have to eliminate alcohol completely for a good while. No exceptions. And yes, at first it's hard, especially when you get together with friends or have family gatherings. But believe me, when you understand the damage it can cause, you stop seeing it as a whim and start seeing it as a poison that's slowly dimming you. The third mistake, and this one is very common, was believing that by dieting for a few days, it was already enough. For a couple of weeks, I ate more vegetables, drank more water, and stayed away from fried foods. But as soon as I felt a little better, I went back to my old habits. I thought, that's it. I took care of myself a bit. Now I can go back to eating like before. And no, the liver doesn't work like that. It's an organ that needs time, consistency, and above all, a real change sustained over time. It's not 2 weeks of dieting. It's not a fad. It's a long-term commitment. And here, I also want to tell you about 2 big myths I myself believed. The first, only obese people have fatty liver. This is completely false. I was never obese. Yes, I had a few extra kilos, but I was never in what doctors call obesity. And even so, my liver was full of fat. Why? Because fatty liver doesn't form only due to excess weight, also due to poor diet, sedentary lifestyle, stress, and years of bad habits that take a toll, even in people who are within a normal weight. The second myth, just stopping eating fats is enough. This is one of the most dangerous mistakes. Many people think that if the problem is fat, then the solution is to eliminate all fats from the diet. But what no one tells you is that there are good fats that are necessary for the liver. Olive oil, avocado, nuts, fish rich in omega-3. These fats are essential to help the liver heal. What you really have to eliminate are trans fats, refined vegetable oils, store-bought pastries, fried foods. But natural, healthy fats are your allies. If you're watching this video and you identify with any of these mistakes, don't feel bad. I fell into them too, and that's why I'm telling you about them today. Because recognizing them was the first step to beginning my real recovery. The small habit that changed everything, the solution I tried once a day. After weeks of frustration, fear, and confusion, there came a moment when I said to myself, this can't go on. I have to do something, even a small step, but something I can keep up with every single day. That's when, in one of my follow-up visits, my doctor told me about a plant that for centuries has been used to protect and cleanse the liver, milk thistle. Honestly, at first I didn't give it much importance. I thought these medicinal plant things were more like grandma's remedies. But when I got home, I started to research, and what I discovered surprised me. Recent scientific studies showed that milk thistle contains a compound called silymarin, and silymarin, according to several clinical trials, has very powerful antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties that help protect liver cells and even regenerate them after years of damage. I read cases of people who, by including a small daily dose, had managed to reduce the accumulation of fat in their liver, improve their blood tests, and above all, feel more energetic. So I decided to try it. I started little by little, following recommendations. I bought a natural milk thistle extract in capsules, but I also learned to prepare it as an infusion, in case I ever wanted to take it in a more traditional way. My routine was simple: 1 capsule a day, right after breakfast. Or, if I preferred the infusion, I boiled a cup of water, added a teaspoon of milk thistle seeds, and let it sit for 10 minutes before straining. Sometimes I added a bit of lemon or a pinch of turmeric to boost the anti-inflammatory effect. I won't lie to you, the first days I didn't notice big changes. But after 2 or 3 weeks, I started to notice several things. First, that constant tiredness I'd been dragging around for months began to diminish. I woke up in the mornings without feeling exhausted, and during the day, I had more energy to do my things, go for walks, even take up some of my hobbies I had put aside. Second, I noticed my abdomen was less bloated. That feeling of heaviness after every meal began to disappear little by little. Digestion, once slow and uncomfortable, started to feel lighter, easier. Even my clothes, tight around my stomach before, started to fit more comfortably. And the best part came after 2 months, when I got blood tests again. For the first time in a long time, the famous transaminases, those indicators that measure liver inflammation, were starting to go down. They weren't perfect yet, but the improvement was clear. My doctor told me, "This is going in the right direction. Keep it up." That felt like a prize to me. One small habit, just one capsule or one infusion a day, and my body was starting to respond. But I want to be very honest with you. Milk thistle is not a magic solution. It's not that you take it today, and tomorrow your liver is spotless. What I can tell you is that it was the first real step that helped me break the cycle of damage, to give my body the tools to start healing, and above all, it motivated me to keep improving other aspects of my life. 5 other daily habits that helped boost the effect. As I told you before, starting to take milk thistle once a day was my first big step. But if I learned anything in this process, it's that the body needs the right environment to heal. And that meant I couldn't stick to just a supplement. I had to accompany it with other small changes. Easy, but consistent. Today I want to tell you what those 5 daily habits were that I added to my routine, and that together made a huge difference in my recovery. I wish someone had explained this to me earlier, because truly, these are simple things, but powerful. First, I started drinking more water. It sounds basic, but you can't imagine how dehydrated I was without realizing it. Before, I could go hours without drinking even a glass of water. I barely drank a little with meals, and many times I preferred coffee or soft drinks. But my doctor explained something that stuck with me. The liver needs water to eliminate toxins. Without enough hydration, you're forcing it to work twice as hard. So I aim to drink at least 6 to 8 glasses of water a day. Not all at once, but spread throughout the day. In the morning, upon waking, the first glass. Before each meal, another. And in the afternoon, a couple more. Little by little, my skin looked better, my digestion was easier, and even my mind felt clearer. Second, walking at least 30 minutes a day. I won't lie, at first it was hard. I felt tired, and I lacked motivation. But I set myself a simple goal. Just go out and walk around the block, every day. And that's how I started. 5 or 10 minutes at first, then 15. Until, without realizing it, I was already walking half an hour daily. Walking helped improve my circulation, reduce body fat, and above all, gave me an energy boost I hadn't felt in a long time. They say movement is life, and in my case, it was totally true. Third, cutting down on sugar and ultra-processed foods. This was perhaps the hardest, because for years I was used to eating cookies, sweets, and industrial breads. And sometimes, without realizing it, I overdid deli meats, snacks, and fast food. But I started little by little, not eliminating everything at once, but making small changes. For example, instead of having a sweet dessert, I made myself a fruit salad. If I felt like snacking, I preferred a handful of nuts or a slice of whole grain bread with avocado. And above all, I eliminated sugary drinks. Water and infusions became my best allies. Fourth, including more leafy green vegetables. I read in several places that foods like spinach, arugula, or Swiss chard are true natural liver cleansers. Their high chlorophyll content helps eliminate toxins, and they're also rich in antioxidants. So I started including at least 1 serving of leafy greens in my main meal, sometimes in salad, other times sautéed with a bit of garlic and olive oil, or even in green smoothies in the morning. Here's one of my favorites: a handful of spinach, half a banana, a bit of grated ginger, and water. Blend it all, and done. Refreshing, easy, and very good for the liver. Fifth, improving my sleep hours. For years, I slept poorly. I went to bed late. I woke up several times at night, and the next day, I was exhausted. But I learned that the liver performs much of its cleansing function at night while we sleep. So I started creating a small routine before going to bed. Light, early dinner. A relaxing infusion like chamomile or valerian. Avoiding TV or phone screens an hour before sleep. Reading a calm book, keeping the room dark and cool. With these changes, I started sleeping more deeply, and in the mornings, I felt less tired and clearer. Adding all this, day after day, week after week, my body began to respond. It wasn't magic. It was consistency. Small habits that, added to milk thistle, gave my liver the chance to recover. Is it possible to reverse fatty liver after 60 years old? Realistic hope. One of the questions my family and friends asked me most when I started telling my story was, "But do you really think at your age you can reverse fatty liver?" And I'll confess something. I asked myself that question more than once. When you pass 60 or 70, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that certain damage in the body is already irreversible. That if you've spent decades eating poorly or living a sedentary life, there's no turning back. But I want to tell you something I learned thanks to doctors, nutritionists, and above all, thanks to my own experience. The liver has an incredible capacity for regeneration. Yes, even after 60, 70, or even beyond. The liver is one of the few organs in our body that can repair itself, as long as we give it the right environment to do so. There are medical studies that show this. Research carried out in people older than 65 years old showed that with sustained changes in diet, exercise, and some natural supplements, you can reduce excess fat in the liver in as little as 3 to 6 months. I won't lie to you. It's not a matter of 1 week, and it's not a miracle cure that happens overnight. It requires commitment, patience, and above all, consistency. But every small change counts. Every day you choose to eat better. Every walk you decide to take. Every glass of water you drink. Every night you sleep better is a step toward recovery. I myself began to notice the first changes after about 6 weeks. I felt more energetic. My digestion was lighter. And in my next blood tests, for the first time in years, my transaminases were going down. It was one of the most exciting moments of this whole process. I remember my doctor looked at me, smiled, and said, "You're on the right track. Your liver is starting to respond." And that phrase, I swear, gave me motivation you can't imagine. There are documented cases of people over 70 years old who, with sustained habits over 6 months, have managed to almost completely reverse the accumulation of fat in the liver. Studies speak of visible improvements on ultrasounds, reduced inflammation, and normalization of liver values in blood. The most important thing I want you to take from this part of the video is this. It's never too late. It doesn't matter how many years old you are. It doesn't matter how long you've had this problem. The body has an incredible capacity to heal, as long as you decide to give it the chance to do so. So if you're watching this video today, if you've been told you have fatty liver, or if you simply identify with what I've shared, please, don't give up. Every decision you make from today on can make the difference between continuing to get worse or starting to get better. Common questions about fatty liver, mini section of quick answers. Over these months, since I started talking about my experience with fatty liver, I've received dozens of questions from people who are going through the same thing, or who suspect they might have the same problem. So in this part of the video, I want to answer briefly, directly, and in an easy-to-understand way, some of the most common doubts. First question, should I take supplements? The quick answer is, it depends. Some medicinal plants and natural supplements, like milk thistle, turmeric, or artichoke, have been shown to be beneficial for liver health, but, and this is very important, supplements are only a complement. They do not replace a healthy diet or exercise, and before starting any supplement, It's essential to consult your doctor, especially if you're taking medication for cholesterol, diabetes, or blood pressure. In my personal case, I did include a natural supplement, but only after my doctor gave me the green light. Second question: can fatty liver be cured with diet alone? The good news is that yes, many times it's possible. In fact, for most people, dietary change is the #1 key to improvement. Reducing sugars, eliminating ultra-processed foods, including more vegetables, fruits, legumes, and healthy fats like those in avocado or olive oil can make a huge difference. But if you add physical activity and good rest to diet, the results will be much faster and longer lasting. Third question: do I need intense exercise to improve? The answer is no. You don't need to join a gym or start running marathons. In my case, what worked best was simply walking. 30 minutes a day of walking at a brisk pace, 5 or 6 days a week, were enough to start noticing improvements. If you can also do some light strength exercises, like lifting a pair of small dumbbells or doing bodyweight exercises, even better. But the most important thing is to be consistent. Moving every day, even a little, is much better than doing nothing. Fourth question: is coffee good or bad for the liver? This is a question I get a lot, and the answer will surprise you. Coffee, in moderate amounts, can be very beneficial for the liver. There are several studies indicating that people who drink 2 to 3 cups of coffee a day have a lower risk of developing fatty liver and also a lower risk of liver fibrosis. That said, we're talking about coffee on its own, or with a little milk, but without tons of sugar or artificial creams. If you don't have issues with hypertension or sensitivity to caffeine, having a couple of coffees a day can be a good habit. But as always, if you have doubts, check with your doctor. Fifth question: should I get follow-up ultrasounds? My answer is yes. Totally recommended. Ultrasound is one of the simplest and most accessible tests to see how your liver is doing. In fact, it was thanks to ultrasound that I discovered the problem. And it was also thanks to it that I could verify that after a few months of habit changes, my liver was much less inflamed and the amount of fat had decreased. Ideally, you get an initial ultrasound when you're given the diagnosis and then repeat it between 4 and 6 months later to check that things are improving. Remember, in addition to ultrasound, it's important to do periodic blood tests, especially to monitor transaminases and other liver function indicators. And that's it for these quick answers. If you had asked yourself any of these questions, I hope I've cleared things up. And if you have more questions, don't hesitate to leave them in the comments. I always try to read and respond to as many as possible. After everything I've told you today, I'd like us to do a quick recap together. Fatty liver is a much more common problem than people think. Many times it appears silently, without showing its face, until one day, the body starts sending signals you can no longer ignore. That inexplicable tiredness, the bloated belly, the heavy digestion that leaves you without energy, and those blood test results that suddenly come back altered. For a long time, I made every possible mistake. I kept eating what I shouldn't, thinking that by avoiding fried foods for a few days, I was doing enough, believing myths like only obese people have fatty liver. But the truth is that all of that was only taking me farther from the solution. Everything started to change the day I decided to do something different. It was a single habit, something small, something I could do once a day. And from there, I started adding more changes. Drinking more water, moving more, sleeping better, and filling my plate with foods that truly nourished me. Today, after several months of consistency, I can tell you something I didn't dare believe before. I feel better than I did 10 years ago. My energy came back, my abdomen deflated, my digestion is lighter, and my blood tests, finally, are back in healthy ranges. I know that maybe right now, you're at the point where I was afraid, with doubts, wondering if you can really get out of this. And that's why I want to end this video with a phrase that, for me, sums up this whole process. I used to think it was already too late for me, but today I feel better than I did 10 years ago. And if I could, you can too. So now it's your turn. Tell me in the comments, have you also had liver problems? Has your doctor ever talked to you about fatty liver? Or maybe you have symptoms and hadn't realized. I'll love to read you. And who knows, maybe your story will be the inspiration for a future video on this channel. And if this information helped you, if at any moment in this video you felt identified or learned something new, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell, because here every week we share real tips and experiences to take care of our health and add quality of life to our years. Thank you for staying until the end. Take good care of yourself, and I'll see you very soon in the next video.